What an opening night. What an opening game for the Kings. Just losing to the Timberwolves by 2, 117-115, with Keegan Murray's last second 3-point shot just rimming out. Obviously, a very tough look, trying to double pump, but he almost got it to go. And there's really just not much to be upset about in this game for the Kings other than the fact that they lost the game. And sometimes that's going to happen. But I thought that they played pretty well. I think there will be two stretches that the Kings really look back on as the reasons they lost this game. And it was the 11-0 run at the end of the third quarter, and then an 11-0 run in the middle of the fourth quarter. And those moments weren't necessarily great defensively, but really I think more so it was the offense not scoring for the last 4 minutes of the third quarter and the offense getting a little chaotic in the middle of the fourth quarter that the Kings are really going to look back on and regret. And of course, there are other things that, you can look back on and point to in this game. Obviously, if Fox makes that shot, I'm sure he'll, regret missing that shot. But it was just a couple of stretches where the Kings kind of let the Timberwolves back into this game. Because other than that, it felt like the Kings played a really good game. And I think for opening night, when you're trying to integrate DeMar DeRozan and trying to get everybody comfortable in a new offense and defense, I thought that it looked pretty good. When Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards are both shooting like they are from deep, both making 5 3-pointers and shooting 15 of them, so not exactly efficient, but Julius Randle going 5 for 6 from 3, like that's just tough, and there's not much that you can really do about that. And that's really what kept the Timberwolves in this game early on, was Randle's 3-point shooting, because other than that, I thought the Kings defensively in the first half were actually really good. It was going to be interesting to see what the Kings matchups were, and they went with Keegan on Anthony Edwards. Kevin Huerter was starting, so they didn't have Keon Ellis to put on Anthony Edwards. But I think anyways, it's probably better to have Keegan just for his size on Anthony Edwards. And then you have DeMar DeRozan taking Julius Randle just like Harrison Barnes would have in the past few seasons. And I thought the Kings defense was really good. Like Kevin Huerter, I thought he was really good defensively, and everyone was really good. The game plan of trying to take the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands. It was send bodies at him, make sure the big stays up on that screen to force Anthony Edwards to either give up the ball or dribble into a trap. And the Timberwolves' only real answer to that in the first half was Julius Randle going by himself, hitting threes or barreling his way inside and making some tough shots. And so I thought for the most part, like DeMar did pretty well on Julius Randle, and the whole Kings defense as a whole was pretty connected in trying to stop Julius Randle. But you just kind of have to tip your cap. I mean, he made tough shots. I think there was one stretch in the first half, and it was when the Kings went smaller with Trey Lyles at the 5. That was the only stretch in which Julius Randle really got easy looks at the basket, and he got maybe 3 of them kind of in a maybe 2-minute span. And so those were the moments where the Kings could have done better, and I think going with Trey Lyles at the 5 was not the right play against a big Minnesota team, especially when Julius Randle is already killing you, because Domantas Sabonis and Alex Len were super important in deterring Julius Randle inside and making him take tough shots, which again, he made quite a few of them. But the Kings were forcing turnovers, and again, they kind of showed these issues of not being able to capitalize in the true like fast break scenarios. And I'll get to that a little later because it came into play later of the Kings not really being able to capitalize on these chaotic scenarios, but they still did a good job, especially in that first half, of when it wasn't there, when they couldn't, break down the 3-on-2 and get a good shot, they would take it back out and be able to exploit the Timberwolves defense from there with the mismatches that they created from pushing the pace in transition. And so that was really good. I thought Fox in the first half operated really well out of the pick and roll with Sabonis. And really, I think Fox was just controlling the offense well. He had 11 assists in this game. That's not something you see very often from Fox. Meanwhile, Sabonis, the guy that normally has that many assists, has 1 assist. So you could really see the way that this Kings offense has shifted, and it's still centered around Sabonis, and he's still very involved, but he's not the guy that's making that pass anymore, at least not in this first game. And you had a lot of Fox operating as the true point guard, a lot of DeRozan operating as the primary ball handler. DeMar was the guy that was running that point guard spot when Fox was out. And I thought that the offense looked pretty good running through those guys in the first half. The Kings relied a lot on the mid-range as we expected. They also got to the free throw line quite a bit. DeMar DeRozan getting there 14 times, shooting 12 for 14, but Sabonis also going 5 for 8 from the free throw line. The Kings only shooting 29 three-point shots compared to the Timberwolves' 50. And so it was very interesting to see how that dynamic changed. You had Keegan Murray holding it down from beyond the arc, 5 for 10 from 3, and noted three-point specialist Domantas Sabonis going 3 for 4 from 3, which was very fun to see. And he hit a corner 3, which I'm pretty sure he only hit one corner 3 all last season against the Pistons, but he's already hit one this season. So you could see all the different ways that the Kings have changed their offense with DeMar now in it, but it wasn't all great. You definitely saw moments where guys didn't exactly know where to be. Like DeMar would get the ball on the wing and Sabonis would kind of be in between. He's like, do I come set a screen? Do I just leave him and let him ISO? So I think it's those moments that are going to take time for guys to get used to. And the Kings' main 5 guys showed up offensively with everyone scoring over 15 points. Fox being the lowest with 15, Monk with 17, Keegan with 23. He was really aggressive, which was fun to watch. Sabonis with 24, and DeRozan with 26. But then outside of that, there wasn't much help. I thought Kevin Huerter played well defensively, but offensively, he just didn't get a lot of shots. And there was a moment in the first half where he did get a 3-point look and he missed. And then he came down the next possession and kind of forced up another one, it felt like, trying to get himself in the offense. But the Kings need guys like Kevin Huerter, Keon Ellis, Trey Lyles to be involved in the offense and taking 3-point shots, because between them, they attempted 6 threes. Keon Ellis took none. Lyles was the only one that hit 1 3. And so those 3 guys are going to be very important. Doug McDermott also played in the fourth quarter, which was weird to me, but he went 0 for 1 from 3. So that's another aspect of the Kings are going to have to figure out how to include those guys. I mean, you had DeRozan playing 43 minutes, Keegan playing 43 minutes, and that won't happen every night, although we know DeRozan led the league in minutes last season, and Mike Brown loved to play Harrison Barnes big minutes, and so that's the swap right there. So I expect him to play a lot of minutes, but the Kings are going to need to get guys open 3-point shots elsewhere, and they're going to need him to knock them down. And maybe that does mean Kevin Huerter on the bench, or maybe they find a way to get him involved offensively in this starting unit. And that's what we're going to have to really figure out early in this season. And I think that's just going to be a process. In the third quarter, the Wolves came out, and it felt like, despite a couple turnovers early, it felt like they kind of figured out how to get around the Kings defense. And Anthony Edwards was really quickly getting the ball out of his hands when the Kings would come with numbers at him. And that was leading to open 3-point shots, which meant that the Kings couldn't send those numbers at him, which opened up opportunities for Ant to keep the ball in his hands and attack Keegan Murray. And Keegan did a solid job this game, but of course he got beat a few times, like is going to happen against Ant, including the last possession of the game, unfortunately. And so the Kings just struggled to contain them from the 3-point line in the second half. And the Wolves are just so much harder to defend when there's more space out on the floor for Anthony Edwards, when Randall's on the bench and or Gobert's on the bench, really both of them at the same time. That's when Ant can just go into attack mode in space. And it's tough when you have Dante DiVincenzo out there. When the Timberwolves would sub out Dante DiVincenzo late in this game and put in Gobert and have Randall in there, like, that was a sigh of relief for me. But then through the third quarter, the Kings kind of went with their anyone but Ant approach, and the Timberwolves started missing some 3-point shots. And that's when the Kings built a pretty good lead. And then in the last 4 minutes of that quarter, the Kings didn't make a single field goal. And that was when it felt like it got kind of chaotic. And that includes a lot of transition plays for the Kings and the Kings not being able to capitalize. And that's something that I've complained about for this team for the last 2 years, is the Kings not being a good fast break team. Yes, it's good for them to push the pace, but when it is those fast break situations, they just don't seem to be able to convert. And it's guys not being decisive enough. It felt like there were a lot of moments where the Wolves defense was, in rotation and kind of out of sorts, and the player with the ball would just kind of stand there waiting for the right thing to open up, scanning the court instead of like going to the rim or just taking that shot. And those situations then lead to fast breaks for the Timberwolves, and they were better at capitalizing, I thought, in those fast break situations. And so that's what really hurt the Kings at the end of the third quarter. And even in the fourth quarter, at the start of the fourth quarter, there were multiple moments where like Fox would drive inside, DeMar would drive inside, and they kept passing to Alex Len. And it's not like Alex Len was wide open. The only time you should be passing to Alex Len is either when he's, out on the perimeter and he's just going to hand the ball off to someone, or when you pass it to him up high so he can catch and dunk the ball. Fox threw a bounce pass like a post entry with 2 seconds on the shot clock. Shoot the ball. And he got it back and got a good look, but rushed it and missed it. So it was those moments too where like Fox and DeMar, they just need to be able to shoot the ball. It's like, don't give it to Alex Len. He's not Sabonis. You can do that with Sabonis, but not Alex Len. Where Alex Len provides value is getting a huge block that leads to a Keegan 3 that put the Kings up 6. And that was a huge play and could have, been the momentum swinger that we looked back on as why the Kings won. But then Anthony Edwards just comes right back and the Kings don't keep him out of the paint and won. It was always going to be interesting how the Kings offense operated down the stretch. We saw a lot of DeMar with mixed results. He got to the line quite a bit. He was going right at Naz Reid. But then there were a few moments in the other 11-0 run that the Kings allowed where he was trying to draw fouls, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't get fouled. Whatever, they didn't call him. And so maybe a little too much isolation, but it's also hard to be mad at that when it is DeMar DeRozan, and he was pretty successful throughout the game. I don't know why Doug McDermott played like 6 minutes in the fourth quarter. It's like they didn't have confidence in Kevin Huerter to be out there, but Doug McDermott, like, he was just worse defensively than Kevin Huerter. So that was odd. I don't know why. Like, if you're going to do that in the second quarter, not the fourth quarter. That was very odd to me. We saw the Kings end this game, though, with Fox, Monk, Keegan, DeMar, Sabonis. So that kind of answered a question there. And that can change throughout the season, but Monk was in the closing lineup, and he played well and got a huge and one. 6 for 9 from the field, had 17 points, 4 assists, no turnovers. Like, it was a very good Monk game. But I loved when the Kings were getting the ball and playing through Sabonis late in that game. And he had some massive moments going inside against Gobert and scoring, hitting a big 3, getting to the free throw line, did miss one. Monk also missed one in clutch time. So that, coming back to bite us again. At least Gobert also missed one to keep it tied. But yeah, I understand we have Fox and we have DeRozan, these guys who can be super successful in isolation, but I loved when those isolations were set up through Sabonis. And I loved when they would run that double screen with Monk and Sabonis up top to get DeMar free and get him going downhill. They were running the double horns action, which is double screen up top for Fox, where he can go one way or the other. But Fox wasn't super successful down the stretch of this one, and he missed the go-ahead shot. The Kings got some big stops and put themselves in a solid position to win this game, and Fox got a good look. I think he was trying to go early to go for that 2-for-1, and I mean, that did save us some time at the end to try to win it. I don't always love how the Kings operate in 2-for-1s, like trying to shoot the ball with 26 seconds. isn't the best for me, because then you don't have much time, but he did get a very good look, so you can't be mad at that. It's when they more try to force a look in a 2-for-1 that isn't great. And then on that last play, Keegan was playing some good defense on Ant. Fox comes over to double. Ant throws to Mike Conley. And then right then is when Keegan's like, okay, I don't want to let him get the ball back. So he really presses up and he almost steals the ball or at least knocks it away and almost forces him back court. But neither of those things happen. And then he's pressed up so tight, Ant's able to turn the corner, and you have Monk kind of helping, but he doesn't really want to help off strong side. You have Sabonis come down, but I mean, once Ant's going downhill, the Kings did a good job for most of the game, stopping him from going downhill, but then at the end there, just couldn't do it. And then also on the last play, like DeMar had Keegan open at the top, but I think he was looking elsewhere. And by the time he saw him, he had to throw it over in a longer pass, which let the defense get there. And Keegan, he almost made that shot, but obviously he did not. But I think overall in this game, like it's a good game one. You're playing a tough Minnesota team and you played them well. And it's early in the season where you still are trying to figure things out. And so I think this is a good start. The Kings don't need to be a fully polished team game one, but I think there are a lot of positives that we can take away from this game. The Kings are just going to need some more production from their bench or their fifth starter. Kevin Huerter played 20 minutes. Keon Ellis played 11 minutes. Malik Monk played 26 minutes. And so it'll be interesting to see how those minutes change, especially depending on matchup. Monk had a solid game and he was getting the floater going and he was instant offense getting inside. And it's great to be able to have 5 guys that can score out there on the floor and make something happen. And that's super important, but there might come matchups where they need defense more, and it's probably Monk's spot in the closing lineup that would be changed. And we didn't see any Jordan McLaughlin in this game, and I think that's also probably matchup based, also because Kevin Huerter's getting minutes now, which he wasn't in preseason, but I don't think you want to go super small against this big Timberwolves team. And so I think him getting minutes is probably also matchup based, and Len might not always play as well. So it's kind of between Len, McDermott, I guess now, and Jordan McLaughlin on who gets minutes at the very end of the bench. Another interesting thing is Isaac Jones was available for this game. He didn't play, but it's interesting them having one of their two-way guys available. The other two weren't available. Looking at Fox kind of individually in this game, 15 points, 11 assists, 6 for 14 from the field. He hasn't totally been able to find that mid-range jumper that he had 2 seasons ago. So it'd be great if he could find that again. But I thought he played a really, really solid game because he never forced anything, but also he was still aggressive in moments. And like he was just blowing by Jaden McDaniels at one point in this game, going high off the glass, and he was picking his spots. So I thought he did a really good job of integrating into the new offense and did a really good job of running the offense. I think the team just needs a little more time with DeRozan to really understand how he wants to play. I will say, I just think it was like a tad too much DeRozan down the stretch, maybe. Like, I want the ball in his hands a lot, but it was just a little too much at times, and even throughout the game, just like slightly too much. But I loved the way that he was able to get to the line. Like, that's fun to watch. And he went 12 for 14, so he shot well. I was getting worried early on there when he missed a couple, but ended 12 for 14, so it's okay. I also think the rebounding, DeRozan came up with some clutch rebounds. Keegan was also getting some clutch rebounds and came up with some offensive rebounds. The Kings only had 4 offensive rebounds in this game. They were trying, and they knocked the ball away multiple times where they didn't end up with it. It's tough against, this Timberwolves team, and it'll be more effective against other teams. But they did a good job on the defensive glass. Keegan with 11 rebounds. Sabonis had 8. So he's not starting off with a double-double streak, and definitely not a triple-double streak. I also think you saw Sabonis, of course, he's not some great rim protector. And we saw that on the last play, and when he gets downhill, Sabonis is not going to do too much about it. But you did see the value of him in rim protection, that it's not all about blocks, because when he's out, especially when Trey Lyles was at the 5, the Timberwolves were just getting free runs at the rim. When Sabonis is in there, he was able to stand his ground inside and affect a lot of shots. And then also he was getting out there on the perimeter, so I thought it was a pretty solid defensive game from Domantas Sabonis. It was also good from Keegan, even though he did get burned, down the stretch. And I thought the starters in general played pretty good defense, and it was, when that bench unit was in, that needs to be cleaned up a bit. Even though the Kings lost, I was pretty happy with that game. Their next game is on Saturday at Los Angeles Lakers. That is the Lakers team that beat Minnesota. Why couldn't Minnesota shoot against us like they did against the Lakers? And that is not about the Kings, bad 3-point defense. That is just Minnesota just hit more shots against us, the same shots that they missed against the Lakers. There were a few things that really stood out to me about the Lakers that the Kings are going to have to keep an eye on. One is Jackson Hayes. He had a really good opening game where his verticality offensively was really hurting Minnesota. So the Kings are going to have to be conscious of that when he's setting those picks, rolling hard to the rim. They're going to really have to be conscious of those lob plays. And then Rui had a really good game in the opener, and that was about him being guarded by Julius Randle and running around trying to get away from Randle, kind of like the Kings tried to exploit Randle as well. That's not necessarily going to happen against the Kings, but his physicality can still be difficult. In the past couple of seasons, it's been Harrison Barnes on LeBron. And so if we're doing the same thing where DeMar is taking HB's matchups, it would be DeMar on LeBron. And we've heard about how Keegan has gotten stronger, but he was absolutely no match for Julius Randle, and that's fair, but DeMar did look better on him. Julius Randle is super strong. But so it'll be interesting to see what that matchup is. And I think it's really going to be a test for this new Kings defense to see if they can figure out how to solve not having a perfect guy to put on LeBron. And on the other end, you got to attack LeBron. You got to attack Rui. You got to make them move. You got to make them defend either, DeMar or chase around Keegan, especially since the Lakers are going to be on the second night of a back-to-back. They're playing Phoenix on Friday. So no excuses for this one. On one hand, you could argue it's early in the season. Guys shouldn't be tired yet, but also guys maybe don't have the conditioning yet early in the season. But the Kings are definitely favored going into this. I know people think JJ Redick, after one game, mastermind coach, he's got the Lakers playing so well, but the Kings should win this game. Obviously, it's not all about wins and losses early in the season. Just like this game, you can still be happy that the Kings showed some really good things, but in the Western Conference, you need to give yourself a buffer because it's tough, especially against teams that you could possibly be right next to in the standings. If you haven't made it this far, make sure to comment, subscribe, help me out. As always, thank you to the members of this channel, No Rain and Joe Mama. Shout out to you guys. I'm so happy that the season is back. That was fun, even though it was painful at the same time and super nerve-wracking. But I will see you guys on Saturday. Peace.